Yep.
If you could hear us, let us know how the audio is. Yeah, I think we're live. Yeah, I think everything is good. Guys, can you hear us? How's the audio levels? The same? I'm lower, somebody's higher.
I'm not seeing us on YouTube yet.
I think we are on. We are on YouTube. Guys, can you?
Oh,
Yes, we are. I see there some people are watching us on Facebook as well. Say hi in the live chat if you could hear us. I see Beej. I see Mike. I
James.
see James. Oh, hi, James. I see Chris. I see Casey Atheist. I see Mate.
Yeah.
Greetings, Armin and Ali. Guys, how's the audio? Is one of us lower, one of us higher? Everything okay? Cool, good to go. Let us know. Oh, I see Carl saying, Carl on Facebook is saying sounds good on FB. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. Okay, all good
All
sound.
right.
Audio good. All right, let's start.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is Armin Navabi. Armin Navabi, hi, how are you?
Good.
Doing good? Okay, so, today's episode is entitled Israel and Saudi Arabia, Strange Bedfellows United Against Iran. So this is kind of an interesting topic that has, sort of a long-term history, and then also more recent events that have been happening. So, one thing to mention over here that we're going to talk about this because we're interested in it. Also, Armin grew up in Iran. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so we also have some personal interest and personal insight into some of these things. I think this should be a fun conversation. So
I've also been following a lot of the Persian content, like Iran, like people from Iran from the opposite side, like discussing United States and Israel and the Iranian government and fighting each. So I could also speak to that. What people?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Go on.
So Armin's kind of tapped into a lot of the sort of the variety of opinions that are going on in Iran right now regarding the whole bunch of these issues that have been happening. So recently what happened was the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is kind of in limbo right now for his position as prime minister, and we're going to get into that in a bit. So he recently tweeted about quote, an open meeting of Arab countries sitting down together with Israel in order to advance the common interest of war with Iran. So he's saying Arab countries, and he sat down and they talked about the common interest of war. Soon afterwards, he deleted the tweet and then changed it to the common interest of combating Iran. Right.
This was a while back, though, right?
Yeah, this was some time ago.
Right.
And then, at the same time, there have been sources. There was I think a media agency that's close to the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, who we've talked about here quite a bit. These Saudis, they're urging the U.S. attack Iran because, and they're saying that it's because of an alleged drone strike that closed down a Saudi oil pipeline. They're blaming that on Tehran. So
they're probably
the fact
right.
that Israel and Saudi Arabia have been kind of working together behind the scenes. I mean, this is this has been an open secret for quite a while. But recently, both of these states have become sort of more open about it. Israel has talked about it. MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, has even said, and this has never really been said by any Saudi royal before, that Israel has a right to its own land. It's come out with the two-state solution, that Israel should have the right to exist as its own state. And this is a Saudi Crown Prince who has said that recently. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to unpack a lot of this. We're going to talk about this relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia. We're going to talk about the proxy war that's happening between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the opposition, the hostility between Iran and Israel, and how the situation in the Middle East, which is usually it's a complete mess and is very confusing. It sometimes generates strange bedfellows, and that's why we called this. And we've actually got Saudi Arabia and Israel working together. Anyway, so that's the basics. But let's start with that's the premise. But let's start with the basics.
Right.
So, Armin, let's.
I just want to say that the only thing that could bring Muslims Sunni Muslims and Jews together, people that are traditional enemies, like is
It's
there
hatred for Shias.
is there mutual hatred for Shias, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that could get them unite with each other. But another thing I want to point out is that Iran just loves the idea of Saudi Arabia working with Israel, because Iran's main PR is to fully take advantage of Palestinian misery, right?
Hmm.
And for Iran to be the main and only champion of the Palestinian people, and it's working. And the fact that the Saudi government is now playing footsies with Israel, I don't know what these people are thinking, because even if, I mean, this is just plays into hands of Iran to show them as monsters and part of the Zionist conspiracy and all of that. Like, it's just, Iran is like, we don't even have to say anything. We just have to report the news accurately for the first time. Like, we used to have to lie to our people. Now we just have to report the news, right?
Yeah. Iran has had it pretty good
Right.
for the last, I don't know, I guess around 15 to 20 years now, almost 20 years. They've had it pretty good in the sense that they just have to kind of sit there
Right.
and let things happen. I mean, for the longest time, the U.S. was supporting Iraq in the Iraq-Iran war. And then after that, when the second Gulf War happened with George Bush Jr., and they went into Iraq to establish democracy, and from well, all of the reports that I read, at least, Bush wasn't really clear on the Shia-Sunni difference and how all of that worked.
Right.
And now you have Iraq is a Shia majority, and now you would have a democracy where you'd have Shia leadership in Iraq, which goes in Iran's interest because now Iran can essentially form an alliance with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so that's one thing that happened, and
It's so
now you
it's so
have this.
amazing how United States wanted to bring democracy into these countries, and how well democracy is working for Iran. Iran is like, wait. Like, Iran was like, wait, you want to bring democracy into Shia majority countries? Like, go right ahead. This is perfect
No,
for
I mean,
us.
exactly. So I mean, so that's one thing. You had the Iraq War. Then you have this whole Syria issue, right, where Assad is out there, and Assad is supported by Iran,
Right.
right? And the U.S. would like nothing more, Israel and the U.S., to go against Assad. But the problem is that his opposition
Hmm.
comes out to be ISIS. So if the U.S. starts opposing Assad and going against him, it's
What?
fighting on the same side as ISIS, but it's
Well,
also fighting against ISIS.
you're getting
No,
a
no, no.
couple of steps
No.
ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm setting the premise for
Right.
how Iran is. There's all this good luck happening to Iran because of the sheer confusion
Right.
around what the alliances are
Mhm.
in the greater Middle East. So I think that's one thing that's interesting. But
Can,
Armin,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah,
No, you
no,
go
no.
ahead.
I just wanted to add to what you were saying about Iran's PR, right?
Right.
And why the Saudis working with Israel is such a good thing for Iran. So one of the frustrations that Arab countries, the population, the people in Arab countries have had with their leaders, which have largely been dictators, is that they feel that their dictators are too friendly to Israel. So a lot of Egyptians, for instance, and Egypt is the largest Arab country in the world, they've had a lot of issues with the fact that their leadership has made an alliance, a treaty with Israel. Right?
Mm.
They have a lot of problems with the fact that Egypt has shut down. Remember Gaza, when we talk about how Israel is cordoned off Gaza, the southern border of Gaza actually is shared with is Egyptian, and Egypt has also cordoned that off. So this frustration among the Arab population with their leaders, that their leaders cozy up to Israel too much. The Saudis feel that way too. I grew up there. I know how much anti-Semitism there is. I know how much that Saudis hate Israel, and that
Oh, with passion.
continues to this day.
So,
Passionately hate
so
Israel.
this is what I don't understand. So the
But
Saudi government has made so many mistakes in the past since Mohammed bin Salman has come to power. I don't know how they're gonna survive all this. Maybe they will, but it's just because they relied so much on Trump, and now they're realizing that they're not gonna get the return on their investment.
it's not going to pay
And
off. Surprise.
yeah, but the thing is that the people, the things that they're doing, their own people, not just the Arabs in Saudi Arabia, but the Arabs in the Middle East, without, if all these Sunni Arabs see them as monsters and friends with Jews, I don't know how they're going to be able to survive with such bad PR, right?
But what's happening now, right, is that again, like, what we're saying is, like, if you look at the passionate hate that the Saudi people have for Israel, and now they see their leader as well cozying up to Israel, right? Whose voices are the lone voices out there that are representing the anti-Israel sentiment of the
Iran.
Arabs? It's Iran. So,
Iran.
And I've said this here before, when Ahmadinejad and Iranian leadership and Khamenei used to talk about how Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth. When they said that was a cry to the Arab people, saying, "Hey, look, do your dictators, do your leaders, have the balls to come out and say this? What we're saying?" And to the Palestinians as well. Hey, is your leadership doing this? And the problem is that they're not. The problem for the Arab people is that they're not. So that in that case, Iran is also gaining some traction.
So let me give you an example for you to see how big of a deal this is. So this is something you expect, and then I'll tell you something that you won't expect, but you see. What you see all the time is, like, when Nasrallah and when Hezbollah people come and give speeches in Lebanon against Israel, and they claim, the Hezbollah leaders and speeches and stuff, they claim that Iran, they openly admit that they're a proxy of Iran in Lebanon. They openly admit that Iran is sending them weapons, that Iran is sending them money, right? They openly admit that. They're not shying away from any of that. But you would expect that from Hezbollah, Hezbollah fighting against Israel, Hezbollah's presence in Lebanon, Hezbollah's presence in the Middle East. You expect that kind of narrative pro-Iran because Hezbollah is Shia. But now if you go look at videos from Hamas, they're saying that as well. And Hamas is Sunni, right?
Yeah.
But Hamas, which is Sunni, but Hamas is defined being anti-Israeli. So Hamas this is actually very recent. If you could go listen to the leaders, they're saying the Arab regimes have betrayed them, and it's Iran that is supporting them. So Sunni anti-Israeli groups are saying Iran is the only government that is supporting them. It's saying that Hamas is saying Iran is sending us support and weapons. And Iran is supporting the Palestinian people, and the Arab countries have betrayed the Palestinian people. So when Sunni militias say that as well, this shows that, that what Khomeini wanted to play this trick and say, like, hey, Islamic Revolution of Iran is not a Shia revolution, it's an Islamic revolution against the tyrants, against the Americans, against the Jews. So Iran wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to use Shia areas in the Middle East to expand itself, but at the same time, it wants to tell Muslims around the Middle East, like, no, this is an Islamic thing, not a Shia thing. And the way Iran tries to say that this is an Islamic thing, not a Shia thing, is by using Palestine.
Yeah.
Palestine is the key for Iran to tell Muslims in the Middle East that this is not a Shia thing, this is a Muslim thing.
Yeah, nobody has leveraged the Palestine issue better than them, and to show that, I mean, this doesn't just extend to Hamas. Hamas is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is an Egypt-based organization. And when Mubarak came down after the Arab Spring, who got elected in a majority, like a clear majority, democratically? It was the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, they came up. So it's the Egyptians also feel this. I mean, they with their leadership, the Arab dictators, the Arab leaders. Forming treaties and allying with Israel has not played with the Arab populations, whereas, as Armin is saying, the Iranian rhetoric that's anti-Israel is actually playing really well among even Sunni groups, like hardcore Sunni groups, like Hamas. So it's working, and it's no wonder that and now Israel and a lot of these Arab leaders have a common enemy, and Arab leaders hate Iran for similar reason. They look at it as a threat to their power.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it to them, like, you might think like how big of a threat Iran could possibly be
Mm.
for Israel and Saudi Arabia to be on the same side. And by the way, Israel and Saudi Arabia do not have the resources to fight Iran. And they know it. And this is why they're trying to drag in United States into this. Because, like, just a couple of examples. Saudi Arabia, with all the military, with all the weapon and the technology, the biggest arms deal in history, that bought from United States.
Mm-hmm.
It went to war with all of that, with all its might, against what? Against Yemen. Against a bunch of Houthis that when you looked at the Houthis on video, they were like, wow, this is like, these are, a bunch of nomads that don't even have shoes.
Destitute.
Yeah. And they went to war against Yemen because they said, these Houthis are Iranian proxies. And they said we could defeat these people in, did they say 3 weeks or 3 months? I forgot.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter because it's more than 3 years now, right? It's how many years? It's 5 years now, right? I lost track how many years it is, but
it started in the Obama years,
right? And they're still at it. Like it's becomes they couldn't defeat one of Iran's weakest proxies. Even if I don't know if it was a proxies yet when Saudis argued and like made an excuse that this is an Iranian proxies, but even if it wasn't, it is now, right? Because they pushed them into to Iran's arms. But they couldn't defeat the Houthis. How? And they want to defeat Iran? Think about the war with Israel. Israel went to war against Hezbollah again.
I was going to mention 2006.
Another Iran's proxies, and Israel could not defeat Hezbollah. Imagine if Israel cannot defeat Hezbollah, what are the chances against Iran? Hezbollah is one of Iran's many proxies. Another example, one last example.
Yeah.
United States wanted to get rid of Assad. Assad, with its military power, is way, way weaker than Iran. And United States, with all its military might, could not remove Assad from Syria.
Despite the red line that Obama drew, that if Assad used chemical weapons, then they're going to go, and that's going to be the red line. That's when they're going to go and they're going to take some action. Since then, Assad has at least twice, if not many more times, used chemical weapons openly, with video of it everywhere. I mean, it's not even like they made a secret of it; they just denied it.
Right.
But there's more than enough evidence that he did that, and he's still in power. He's still working. Iran is still supporting him. And just one thing I wanted to mention about the 2006 war that Hezbollah had with Israel, that had a massive influence on the Palestinians and how they thought of Iran. I mean, that kind of reinforced the idea that, okay, this is just a proxy. This is the Arab army of Iran, a proxy army of Iran that's fighting Israel, and Israel could not defeat them. Right. So what hope does it have? And these are the people fighting us. So that's something that was very, very, it galvanized a lot of sort of the Palestinian anti-Israel parties.
Another example in the live chat is that United States couldn't defeat Taliban, right? Taliban is still a thing. And compare Taliban's military might to Iran's military might. Again, I'm not
the longest running war in Afghanistan is the longest running war.
Right. And Taliban is nothing compared to Iran's military might. By the way, I'm not trying to exaggerate Iran's power. Yes, if you go full force United States against Iran, obviously Iran will be defeated. But first of all, Iran will go for full force. United States does not have the budget, does not have the political appetite, does not have the will to go full force. And even if it did go full force, imagine the mess that we dealt with removing Saddam and what that looked like after. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. That times, I don't know how many times, it would be a lot worse, because when United States attacked Saddam, that was Saddam at its weakest, right? When they couldn't even completely destroy Taliban, and they're still stuck with Taliban. But compare that to what the situation is with Iran right now. Iran's military might right now, it's at its highest compared to the 40 years Iran has been in power.
Hmm.
Iran has allies and its tentacles all over the Middle East. Iran owns Iraq when it comes to the military. The
Yeah.
proxies, the Hashd al-Shabi in Iraq is Iran's military in Iraq, which is stronger than Iraq's own military.
Yeah.
Like,
And so one of the things you said that among the reasons that the U.S. does not want to attack Iran and go to war with Iran, one of them is they don't have the will to do it, right? And one of the reasons they don't have the will, they probably don't have the capacity either, because I mean they stressed themselves out in Afghanistan, they stressed themselves out in Iraq. Neither of those wars had any real positive outcome. The Taliban is still in power, as Armin said. In Iraq, it created this sort of vacuum that created like horrible civil war. ISIS rose out of that. So there have been a lot of issues. It didn't really pay off the way that they wanted it to. So now starting another war with a country as powerful as Iran that has a backing of Russia as well, right? And it's just not something that they have the will for. And more importantly, is the aftermath.
right.
Once you attack Iran, right? You have, and we actually have a relevant comment about this. RPG Gamer Guy is saying,
Chris.
correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Iran have an alliance with Russia? So starting a war with them has a potential to start World War III, right?
Let me clarify. Let me tell you what Iran does with Russia. Iran is right now allied with Russia, but Iran knows better to rely on Russia. Like it knows, because Iran is very smart about, like, compared to the Saudis, Iran has been very strategic with using ideology to build allies, right? So right now is relying on Russia, but because its alliance with Russia is not based on ideology, it knows that Russia will completely drop it as soon as it's not convenient for it anymore. The alliances that Iran will bank on are the ones that are based on spreading the Vilayat Faqih version of Shia Islam, or all over the Middle East, because these are the proxies that Iran enjoys, the Hashd al-Shabi, the Hezbollah kind of people. These are people that will die for Khamenei, right? Russia will be here today, might not be behind you tomorrow. But go on, Ali.
Right. But I mean, with Russia, the problem is that they have their sympathy for Iran is actually very clear, even though Russia does kind of cozy up to everybody, and they're not very reliable. Like, they're friends with everyone. They meet with Netanyahu, they meet with Assad, they meet. Right. I mean, so Iran has been supporting Assad a lot. Russia has been supporting Assad. And when Obama drew that red line, he said, if there's chemical weapons, then I'm going to go into Syria. And then the chemical attack happened. And then he backed off of it. The reason he backed off of it is because they had a meeting with Russia. Russia said, don't worry, we're going to just take all their chemical weapon capacities and we're going to keep them with us.
Right.
So Obama was like, okay, good. That gave him an easy way out. So he let go. He had an excuse not to follow through on his promise. And, a couple of years later, same thing happened. So nothing really, it's not like Russia necessarily did anything. So there is, it's a complicated thing, but that doesn't mean that the aftermath isn't going to be horrendous, right? The aftermath is going to be, if they go to war with Iran, the potential for that it could be really, really bad.
Well, right now, Iran is calling U.S.'s bluff on this. Like, Iran, the government doesn't think they're serious about war, right? They think, like, it's, like, especially since it's Trump's first term, and they think that if you go to war with, if Trump goes to war with Iran, it will lose the election, right? Because remember, Trump doesn't have what Bush had to go to war with, Bush had 9/11. Right now, Trump doesn't have anything like 9/11 to bank on to be able to go to war.
Bush also had a previous 8 years of peace and prosperity. So during the Clinton time, like, apart from a few little cruise missiles going over here, a little bit of presence and sanctions, there weren't really any major expensive wars that the United States was involved in.
Right.
After 9/11, with Afghanistan and Iraq, the United States has been stretched very, very thin. So that's also another situation that Trump is facing that Bush didn't have.
The thing, and also Trump doesn't have the right base. If you look at the new Republican, the definition of the Trump base is more anti-war. Like, it used to be that. The
No, I
Republic,
said they want the troops out of everywhere. They
yeah,
want to get them out.
and Trump recognizes that. Trump recognizes that his base doesn't like war. And this is more of a John Bolton kind of thing that wants to push United States into become more aggressive. Trump himself doesn't have the appetite for it, and he saw the pushback from his own base when he did bomb some Assad.
Syria.
As yes, he did bomb Syria. His own base was extremely angry about it. So he knows that he will lose a lot of his supporters if he goes to any war. Like United States, United States citizens on average are very anti-war unless something major happens. Like even in World War II, like the whole Europe was under in hell, and United States citizens were like, "Yeah, no, we don't want to go." It took Pearl Harbor for United States citizens to start supporting a war, right?
Oh, they
So,
even had a treaty. Like
right,
they couldn't help the UK. The UK wanted Churchill wanted the US to come help bail it out, and Roosevelt said, "I'm sorry, I just signed this treaty, right? This Neutrality Act, and
right.
I can't get involved." And
So,
yeah, again, they didn't get involved until Pearl Harbor when they got rid
so
of it.
okay. By the way, this is a little bit conspiracy theory. I don't know. I'm not saying this is happening, but some people are saying that like people that within the government, United States government that want war have sent U.S. assets and military in Iraq as sacrificial lamb for Iranian proxies to attack. So, like, basically, they sent U.S. soldiers in Iraq are there to die, so that their blood could be an excuse for United States to attack Iranian assets. Right? Again,
Mm.
this is just something that is being discussed. I haven't seen any evidence for it, but I'm just reporting the fact that it's being discussed. Okay, not reporting the fact that it's true. Right? And the argument is that Iran is not taking the bait. Iran knows they're saying Iran like his attack is not first of all directly engaging, is sending some proxies to attack some oil interests and not directly United States assets, right? Because they don't want to give an excuse for United States to attack. But some people say no, this is not true. United States doesn't even want to attack Iran. The United States is trying to bluff to scare Iran to a position to go back on the negotiation table when it comes to the nuclear deal. But Iran is not going to go back to the negotiation table on the nuclear deal because if there's one thing that is now uniting both the so-called reformists and the conservatives, I mean, they're all conservative, but what would be the alternative to say? The fundamentalists and the reformists in the Iranian government, now they used to be two sides. They used to be the fundamentalists were like, no deal with the United States. This nuclear deal is bullshit. We can't have deals with the United States. They will betray us. And the reformers were like, no, we need to open the board. We need to open investments to the world. We need to negotiate. We need to become more friendly to the rest of the planet. And when Trump came and pulled the deal, now the fundamentalists are started clapping and we're like, we told you, look how ridiculous you look right now. And the reformists are saying, no, we should have given it a try. But now that we've given it a try, and to show the reformers are saying this was our plan all along to make United States look like ridiculous because now the whole world sees that they don't when they make a deal is. Iran looks good now. The reformers are saying we supported the deal because now Iran looks good because we didn't back out of the deal. United States back out of the deal, and the fundamentalists are like, no bullshit. You thought this is going to bring prosperity to Iran, but it didn't. And we told you that you shouldn't have talked to United States. But now they both are getting on the bandwagon of we do not talk to United States anymore, right? They both on that bandwagon, and it's political suicide to suggest we should negotiate with the United States after Trump pulled out of the deal. So now that Trump is saying, "Oh, we're going to put them under pressure to come back to the negotiation table," they're not going to come back to the negotiation table. Even if you attack, they're not going to come back to the negotiation table. Like that's unless somebody does something that is without anyways, like it's really really unpopular to do that right now in the
Yeah.
political side, right? But
There
go.
is also, so politically, it's actually even more complicated than that because there are other variables. First of all, the leadership of Netanyahu is in limbo, right?
Right.
So anybody who negotiates with Netanyahu right now or comes up with any sort of any for like the U.S. or Saudi, anybody who does anything with Netanyahu, you don't know where he's going to be. So Netanyahu is stuck in a big political mess. First of all, Israel is having is having another election now, which is unprecedented. This never really happened before, because Netanyahu, even though his party won the election, the previous election, they were not able to form a majority government. And we'll get into the details of that later if we need to. But he could not form a majority government. Now he has to start another one, and then his pre-indictment hearing for corruption is also coming up, and that'll probably happen before he is able to go ahead and if he wins again, then before he can form a government, it'll happen before that. So there's a lot of wild cards for Netanyahu. Trump similarly is in a different kind of limbo for the longest time. There was a lot of inaction because nobody knew what was going to happen with the Mueller report. Now that the Mueller report's out and it seems like Trump is relatively safe, there is still the issue that if Trump gets removed from office in 2020, the next administration, whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, is going to have a very different foreign policy than Trump did. So Trump is thought of as an aberration in either way. So if there is a risk of him losing the election in 2020, it's not really safe to make any sort of deals with him that can reliably be have any kind of long-term life expectancy. So you've got both of these issues as well. So everything is kind of in limbo. This is obviously not the kind of situation where you'd want to make a decision like starting a war.
No, but this is Iran. I don't know. Like I think the Iranian government, the people that are in the Iranian government, they must think God must be on their side.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, 20 years, Iraq war. The Assad, the U.S. backs out of Syria. The U.S. and makes Iraq like a Shia majority, gives the Shia majority in Iraq power. The U.S. doesn't. Everything that's been happening has just been right. Exactly what Iran needs to do. Iran doesn't need to do anything.
Right.
It just needs to sit there and watch. And apparently the most damaging thing that's happened to Iran, right? The most damaging thing that actually objectively you can measure with looking at the unemployment rate, looking at a 65% or so drop in the value of their currency, happened with the sanctions that were there before the Iran deal was struck. Right. The reason that they struck the Iran deal, the reason Iran came to the negotiating table and struck that deal with the P6 or the US and the other European countries is because it was choking under those sanctions. That was actually the worst thing that happened for them. All of the saber rattling about war and everything, I would be shocked if Iran is taking any of it very seriously.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the first sanctions, under Obama worked because they thought like, okay, maybe if we go to negotiations, we could open the borders, open investments, have a better relationship with the rest of the world. At least the reformers were saying that, right? But the reason why the tougher sanctions now would not work is because the Iranian government would go to the people and be like, why would we make a deal with these people? We already made a deal once with them, and then
Look what happened.
Look what happened. Like, it doesn't matter, you're like, oh, sanctions, oh, we don't, like, a lot of people, to be fair, in Iranian people, there's a diverse set of opinions there. Like, you're going to find many Iranian people that will support the government, support, doing a new deal, don't support the government, but don't want a new deal.
Even support an attack on Iran from the U.S.
Oh, yeah. I have seen tweets from Iran. There's tweets from Iran that says, come nuke Tehran or something like that. Like, I've seen some shit like that. It's weird. But there's, like, if anybody comes and says, oh, the Iranian people think this, just tell them to shut up, because there's many different groups of people. There's no, and every side tries to make the support for their opinion seem like the majority opinion, right? There's no reliable. Right, go on. Ali, are you there?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got cut for a second.
Yeah, I'm there. There was a little bit of a glitch. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear. Go on. You were going to say something.
Okay. Yeah. So, but there is one thing, like, what you were saying, that The reformists and the fundamentalists eventually came together. Like after this whole deal was pulled out of. So that
Well,
there
they
is
didn't
one
come
thing
to
that
technically they didn't come together because they still hate each other. But they sound now they're
they
both
they see
anti
eye
the
to eye
they see eye to eye when it comes to like
on
no to
this,
negotiations. Yes.
right, this
Yeah.
issue, and they will see eye to eye now when it comes to trusting the U.S. On anything, because I mean this is something that the Mossadegh incident, right? When in 1953, so people don't know, in 1953, Iran had a democratically elected head of state. His name was Mohammad Mossadegh, right? He
Mm.
was elected democratically as a democracy, and then he was ousted. He was removed from power by the CIA and the British. They got together and they removed him from power,
Mm.
and then a dictator came in his place. So this was the U.S. overthrowing a democratically elected leader from Iran, and that did not play well. Eventually, I think it was Obama who later apologized for it. Much later,
Mm.
and he admitted that that's what happened. So there was always this. There's always this conspiracy stuff that the U.S. is up to this. The Western powers are doing this, and that's what the Iranian leadership tells its people. You can't trust them. This is what they do. Look what happened with Mossadegh, right?
Right.
So they can feed the people any kind of conspiracy. Now that you have this, so we trusted them with the Iran deal and all that stuff, and then the next government comes in and it just violates it and says, okay, screw it. They rip up the deal. That just reinforces that narrative. So I think even the people who were the most optimistic about it, now are going to be cynical.
So a lot of people think, so yes, Iranian military they say is more powerful than it has ever been, but a lot of people think, well, yeah, but this isn't going to last long because what Trump is doing is putting a sanction on Iran that is so brutal that it's going to bring Iran to its knees, and this is not true. The reason why it's not true is because the way that Trump wants to do that for Iran not to be able to sell a drop of its oil to anybody. That's not going to work. India and China are going to be like, well, you don't get to tell, like, they're going to tell the United States to go fuck itself in a more polite way. Especially China. China, like, this, Trump's plan really, really depends on China playing ball with the United States. And right now, it's not a good time. Not a good time for Trump to be asking China for favors. The relationship Trump and China are having is so inconvenient for Trump for it to rely on China, right? So Iran will be able to sell its oil. It will be able to sell much less of its oil, but it will still be able to sell its oil. And the thing is that no matter how much these sanctions hurt Iran, the truth is that the connections and the alliances Iran has makes it capable of being able to carry out a lot of operations on very low budget. And Iran has survived way worse than this. Like when United States used to be more powerful in the Middle East and Iran used to be less powerful in the Middle East, and United States backed a war, the Iraq war, against Iran, and Iran was a country that came out of a revolution, a country that was bankrupt at that time, and it survived that war. One thing that Iran doesn't have compared to there is the approval rating. Like Iran coming out of the revolution, it had people coming up and volunteering in millions. It doesn't have that anymore, but it has more tentacles and connections and networks around the Middle East. United States doesn't enjoy as the strength it had before in the Middle East compared to now. Iran does. So yes, these new sanctions will hurt Iran. It will especially what the amount of the kind of hurt that the United States is banking on is to make Iranian people more upset with their government, because things are getting the inflation in Iran right now is astronomical. Everything is more expensive. People cannot afford food. Like everyone's share of meals is getting smaller and smaller, and the key thing is now for Iran, and so a lot of people will blame this on the Iranian government. So this will increase. So United States wants the sanctions to increase this disapproval in Iran against Iranian government. So Iran's play would be to be like, look, this is United States' fault. And you might think like, well, then do a deal with the United States, and they were like, we can't. Look, we tried and it failed, right? So they say the narrative will be of the government that this is not a hurt. The hurt that you're feeling is not coming from us. It's coming from the United States, right? And here's the thing, Ali. This is very interesting. Iran is getting even more clever. Saudi Arabia's government is getting more dumb, and Iran's government is getting more clever. They're evil, but they're clever. You know how the early years after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Khomeini hated like nationalism, wanted to focus on Islam, but because of the Iran-Iraq war, they realized that they have to play the nationalism angle a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Khamenei is realizing that's now in a bigger way. He just recently, in one of his sermons, he came out and said, this is not about... So it's so clever because they have a different message to different people, right? To the Shias, their Shia puppets around the Middle East, they say this is an anti-Sunni thing. To the Muslims, they're saying this is Islam versus the non-Muslims thing. To their own people, in Iran, Islam is not as popular in Iran itself than it is among their puppets outside of Iran.
It's about their Persian heritage.
It's about Iran. It's not about to their own people. Okay, they used to say this, but these words did not come out of the mouth of Khamenei. This is the words that came out of other people to Iranian people to save. Don't save Islam, save Iran against its enemies. But I've heard this for the first time. Khamenei say this. Khamenei, who's supposed to be the religious leader of Iran, said this is not about Islam. That if you're Iranian, you would be on the right side. So he was
coming up. Yeah, nationalism.
But it's weird that Khamenei is playing the nationalism game because he's the religious leader. So they are so clever. They know their audience. They know what to say to what people. To use Hussein and Shiism to what people. To use Islam to what people. And to their own people at home to use their Iranian nationalism angle. And it's working everywhere. Yeah.
You can merge this. This is like, what we were saying about the... I guess I can mention it. The Imam Tawhidi interview with Candace Cameron. Candace Cameron. What's her name?
Candace Owens.
Yeah, Candace Owens. When he talked about, he painted the Karbala battle as and Imam Hussein as a reformer. It's like, oh, he was a reformer, and look at how that turned out. So it's kind of there is a tactic, and this is, I think, a larger sort of more than taqiyya, right? Which is pretty much almost always a myth.
Well, no, like it's not always a myth, but the way Westerners use it is a myth, but it is there.
But this is the I think the aspect of the Shia people that a lot of people tend to fall for. I mean, and people fall for it, just all over the world. And you're right. I mean, Khomeini did it. It's nothing new. Khamenei is leveraging nationalism when it suits him, and when you have that mix of nationalism with Islam, and you will have jihad mixed with nationalism, there's no stopping that. I mean, that's what Khomeini leveraged. That's what in Israel, what they're like in Palestine, that's what they're doing. The combination of jihad and nationalism. Right. It's just it's a toxic combination. It's a very powerful combination that is almost impossible to defeat. And we've seen that throughout history.
You mentioning history, another thing that people have to understand is that people in the Middle East, they remember their history, right? And unfortunately for United States, history doesn't make United States look good in the Middle East, right? And they will, the Mossad example, they will bring that up a million times, right? And people don't forget these things, and they will use that against them. But
now you also have the backing out of the Iran deal example,
right?
Of never trust the Western countries.
So going back to Saudi Arabia and Israel, let's put ourselves in their shoes, and them looking at Iran, because from their perspective, Iran is looking scarier and scarier, and they are right. They are right. I mean, if you look at the map, right? If you look at Iran's influence, right? So you have Iran now technically, I know people will fight this, but arguably owns Iraq, and owns Syria, right? So you have Iran basically having direct, like Iran can take people. There's some military officials in Iran were joking that they could just basically take an Uber if they wanted to from Iran to the borders of Israel, like something like Uber, right? So basically
Yeah.
now, like, Israel is like, what the fuck? My number one enemy is now basically shares a border with me, arguably, right? Because if Syria and Iraq is in Iran hands, so they just managed to come all the way here, right? And Iranian government doesn't hide the fact that their understanding is that Jerusalem will one day be captured for Islam, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole goal. That's the end goal of Iran, right? So here's the thing. This is what so a lot of people like Israel versus Iran. No, sorry, Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia looks a lot scarier to a lot of people because they're like, look at all the terrorists around the world, right? They came from Sunni background. They came from a Wahhabi education that came out of Saudi Arabia. Look at 9/11 hijackers. They were all Saudi, right? So they're like, why should we worry about Iran, where we have all the terrorist threats come from Sunni background people? But from another perspective, if you look at it, is that terrorist attack compared to the empire building that Iran is doing is nothing, because when it comes to the interest of United States, the interest of Israel, and the interests of Saudi Arabia in that region, Saudi Arabia technically wouldn't be against, anyways, but at least Israel and United States, Iran is a much greater threat than terrorist attacks here and there by a bunch of Wahhabi. They're taking over the whole area, right? Of course, they're not going to do. Iran would not do a 9/11 because Iran is not suicidal, right? Iran doesn't. Iran. Why would Iran do anything like 9/11? Iran is like, I'm taking over my own neighborhood. I don't need to go to New York. I'm dominating this entire area. I just want United States to get the fuck out of my backyard. That's what I want. I don't need
Iran,
they're like, I don't need to defeat United States in New York when I'm defeating United States right here. Why do I need to go all the way to their borders? But go on.
Yeah, and they're doing. That's the thing. They do it more covertly. I think the Sunnis have a more overt and, well, frankly, like a kind of a dumber or more sort of short. They think very short term when they're doing it. So they're going and attacking these places where they are. But what Iran does is it does what it did in 2006 with Hezbollah against Israel. It does what it did by supporting Assad, right? Who has killed hundreds of thousands of people already. So this is kind of the way that Iran plays into it. So it's not like Iran has never been involved in terror. That's what they say.
No, it has been involved in. Hezbollah is a terrorist group, and Iran funds it. Hamas is a terrorist group. Iran funds it. But
Assad is a state terrorist. So.
Assad is a state terrorist. But the thing is that the terrorist attacks that the Westerners remember is the ones that happened on their own soil, and Iran hasn't been involved in those, right? We got a super chat. Do you want to read the super chat?
Yeah, the super chat is from RPG Gamer
Chris.
Guy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, who?
His name is
Chris?
Yes, Chris.
Okay, Chris. Hey, thank you. And he's saying that as it stands now, I think Iran's downfall will come from internal strife instead of an outside force.
I don't think so. Okay, I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, comment, tell me, like, Armin, you were wrong, okay? But the internal uprisings in Iran is not going to bring down the Iranian government as it stands. When Khamenei dies, maybe something will happen, but I don't... but think about it. The protests that happen in Iran... the protesters, their numbers and their capabilities and their resources was a fraction of ISIS. Okay, Iran defeated ISIS in many battles. Okay, you think if Iran can defeat ISIS in battles, do you think they can't take care of their protesters? Iran didn't even have to bring its military power. The recent protests that happened, Iran didn't even use a fraction of its resources against that. It just used local police and the Basij. It didn't bring out its Artesh or the other branches of the IRGC. It didn't bring that out. It could have. These protesters, they don't have guns, they don't have tanks, they don't have RPGs. ISIS had all of those, and Iran managed to defeat them and destroy them in many of these battles. So if Iran could do that, do you think that these protesters can bring down this government? They can't. And I know a lot of Iranians. By the way, I keep losing support from a lot of Iranians that are for the Iranian government to fall, because I keep saying that the chances are low. And they're like, and I keep hearing for the past 40 years in Iran, you keep hearing people that want this government to fall, that any day this government is going to fall. Tomorrow, this week, this month. And they keep saying it. And it's been 40 years, and this government is only getting stronger. So I might be wrong. I might be wrong. They might be right. And they hate me because they say, like, I'm taking away hope from the people, and they're not going to protest if you take away hope. But this is just my opinion, and I'm happy to be proven wrong.
So, whatever. So, just to counter to what you're saying, I know you'll be happy to be proven wrong, but one of the driving forces behind the Iran deal and that whole buying time of 10 years and trying to keep that going, that the European countries and the United States with Obama and Kerry established in the Iran deal. One of the purposes, one of the resting assumptions on that was that the Iranian populace, the population of Iran, is actually the most pro-secular and pro-Western Muslim majority population or country that there is anywhere in the Muslim world, and that the youth, the people who are under 35 are about 70% of the population,
right?
And that the hardliners who are running the country, the clerical establishment, is getting older and older, and they've got cracks in it. So I'm just giving you the counterpoint.
Right.
So what they thought was they're like, as far as if we have any kind of hope with any kind of place in the Muslim world, right, that we can eventually galvanize the population of and provide some sort of covert support to, and not actually create a revolution there, but maybe facilitate a significant change there, then that would be the population of Iran. So that was one of the assumptions under which the Iran deal was made.
There's a problem with that narrative, though. But go on, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean that was one of the things that I read. It was one of the intelligence analyses. Again, I don't know, because you're right. It's when people talk about, well, the Iranian government is going to be coming down any day now, and they were saying that in the 2009 the Mousavi protests. They said it most recently here, and as you're saying, like the Iranian resources, that's a very good point. I mean, if they can defeat ISIS with all of its weaponry and all of its money, I mean, they can absolutely do that to their own protesters, right? But they have that, but at the same time, I mean, it kind of reminds me of when Netanyahu, since 1990s, he's been saying Iran will have a nuclear weapon in 1 year. Iran is 2 years away. It's 5 years away. It's 3 years away. He's been saying that since the 90s, but it just doesn't happen. So I don't know. What I'm saying, I don't know what's happening with Iran. I don't think anybody really knows. I know the CIA doesn't have as much penetration in there. People just don't know what the pulse is. Nobody really has an actual pulse on it.
Well, here's the problem. There's no reliable way to figure out what percentage of Iranian people think what. Okay, there's no reliable.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's no pulse.
The thing is that you could only guess based on social media trends, based on what people are saying on Twitter, the comments on YouTube and Facebook, and none of that is going to be scientific way. But you could just say, like, it looks like this. And the problem is that every side will make it seem like the majority of Iranian people think this, right? And but Iran's population is around 80 million, right? Mm-hmm. The most conservative estimate, I would think, that and this is based on a lot of what experts are saying, and experts could be wrong, but this is the best we have. You have at least, and again, this is the lowest, I think, you have at least 10 million people in Iran that will support the government, that support this government out of these 80 million. And this is, very, very low. Like, I think it might be higher, right? Out of these 80 million, there's at least 10 million people that would support this government. And these are people that, if you support the government, you think that these are like, by support, I don't mean strategic support. I mean like ideological support. Because there are a lot of people, there, on top of this, people that support this government because they believe in it, there are a lot of people that hate this government and even hate Islam, but they're supporting it. But they support this government because they saw what happened in Iraq, because they saw what happened in Libya, and because what they saw happen in Syria. They're like, you know what? Fuck this government. And some of them say, fuck Islam altogether. But if this government falls, we're going to have 10 years of civil war like we had in Iraq. We're gonna like look at Libya. Do you want to live like Libyan people? Like slavery is back in Libya. Apparently, people are being sold, right?
No, yeah, it is.
They were like, look at Syria. Look what happened to Syrian people. Do you want that happen to us? So fuck it. We'll take it. We'll take this. I know, by the way, me swearing is. I'm trying not to swear. I know some people don't like it. I'm working on it. Okay, but they say, forget it. I hate this government. I hope they all die, and if there is a hell, I hope they roast in hell. But as it stands, I'm going to support this government because they bought, and also a lot of them have bought into the narrative that, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong, that the United States doesn't give a shit about the people of Iran. They have their own interests, and even though this government is anti the people of Iran, the United States is not even against Islam because they're supporting Saudi Arabia. They're not support. The United States is not for. The United States cannot be for human rights of the Iranian people, because if it was for human rights, it wouldn't be supporting Saudi Arabia. So United States is just against Iran. It's not against this government. It just wants Iran to be weak, because they look at the record of United States. It's like United States was against the Shah as well. A lot of them are being reintroduced to their history. They thought like, oh, we were told during our childhood by this government that United States, like our previous government, the Shah, was a puppet of United States. But now we're realizing that United States betrays every Iranian government. So it's against So the narrative that this government is selling now is that it's not about
the U.S. backing out of the Iran deal. Probably didn't help that narrative.
Yeah. So the government is like, listen, United States is not against us. The United States is against Iran. It's against you, whatever the government is. And this narrative is now selling, and not to everybody, because again, there are a lot of people that want the United States to attack Iran, but a lot of people that are even against the government don't want they want this government to stay, because they like, I'll take the devil ruling over Iran over civil war, because I have a job. At least I have security. I don't want to worry about people, ISIS coming to Iran again and doing what it's doing to Syria. I take I take the sanctions. I take having less food, less luxury over having to worry about ISIS, because at least we have security. Right? And people are like, oh, how could you think you have security? They're arresting people that are protesting. They're like, yeah, but if I keep my mouth shut, nobody's gonna come arrest me, right? At least if I keep my mouth shut. And remember, we see videos of protests, and we're like, oh my god, the people are uprising. But among the people that hate the government, only a tiny fraction of them are coming in the streets. Only a tiny fraction of the people that hate the government are coming in the streets.
But Armin, how do you know? So you're saying the 80 million people, there are 10 million who actually ideologically support the government, and the rest of them are just, they hate the government, but they're just kind of sticking with them because they're
not the rest of them. Okay, so again,
but how do you know that it's like 10 million out of 80 million?
No. Okay, so I'm saying based on what Iran experts from Iran and outside of Iran, the lowest number I've seen is 10 million. The lowest number I've seen. And I don't know.
And this is based on polling, or?
This is based on expert experience, and that's why you have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's so unreliable, right?
Yeah,
it's so unreliable, but this is all we have, right? It's all we have, right? But I've never seen anybody suggest lower than that, right? Mm-hmm. because I think it's probably higher, right? But again, because we don't have reliable polls, you have to be very skeptical about these numbers. And I'm saying be skeptical about these numbers. But even if it's 5 million, which is not, I really think, okay. But the thing is that out of these million, out of the 10 million, 2 million of them are willing to die. Do you think if tomorrow all of a sudden Iran government falls, right? And we have what? A democratic government and a secular government comes, takes their replacement. Do you think all these people that would have died for Khamenei would sit back and be like, oh, I guess we have a secular government now? Do you think they would just sit home and be like, okay, let's deal with this new reality?
It's going to be civil war.
But here's the thing. One thing that the people that support, okay, so we have people that support the government for strategic reasons. That we have people in Iran that don't want this government, that want this government to fall without United States help. We have people that want this government to fall with United States help. But among the people that support this government and they're ideologically in line with this government, they think the people that want the government to fall, they're pussies. They say like, you want the government to fall, but you will faint from seeing one drop of blood. Okay, so here's the thing. The government, this is the narrative on social media, by the way. It's so amazing. So the government supporters, the ideologically in line government supporters in Iran, they challenge the activists in Iran that want the government to fall, because they say they're saying we're calling your bluff because you're all pussies, you're all liberal elites living in Upper Tehran that want, you know how the conservatives make fun of liberals in the United States, like, oh, go get your Starbucks stuff. So they
arugula.
Yeah, so the Islamic right wing people in Iran, they think that these protesters, yeah, they might be able to tolerate being arrested for a few hours or a few days or a few weeks, but they're not willing to die for it. They're not willing to die for this government to fall. They think as if they see blood, they will run away. They say that the people that are on the side of the government, they will give their lives and their children's lives and their whole family's lives to keep this government, because they are keeping this government alive for the Mahdi to come back, for the end of times. This is the government chosen by God to represent Mahdi until the end of time. Right.
It's a combination of nationalism and apocalyptic, like a religious apocalyptic fetish.
Right.
Like it's that combination.
So the Iranians that want the government to fall, they know that they're not willing to die for it, and that's why some of them, not all of them, they were like, hey, we need foreign assistance for this to make this happen, right? A lot of them, some other groups that want the government to fall, they're like, yeah, we want this government to happen, but not with foreign support, because you're a traitor if you ask for foreign support for this. This has to come from right. So there's different groups, but the thing is that if this government falls, it will be civil war, because these this religious people will fight the secularists till they die, and there will be other groups. There will be the Turks. There will be the Turks in northwest of Tehran. They will be like, this is the time for our independence, and we can join a new Azerbaijan. And the Kurds will be like, this is our moment in history. Finally, we'll have a country. The Arabs in Khuzestan will be like, this is the time for our independence, because now we could, like, Iran has been so bad to the Arab citizens of Iran all this time, and they even had a terrorist attack recently. So the Arabs in Iran want independence from the rest of Iran. The Sistan, Baluchistan, the southeast of Iran
province, yeah,
they were like, this is our time to get independence. And the fact that they haven't been making this a secret that they want independence, right? And if this government falls, they will all pick up arms. And here's the thing: the non-religious nationalist type in Iran, they're like, fuck it. If all these people want independence, then we don't want this government to fall, because we don't want give excuses to these people to. They say we will. Okay, so the religious people...
Well, because now they're going to be at war with everybody else, because
the
secular ones are the most chill, and they're the ones who...
No. Actually, on this, they're not chill, okay? So the nationalist, secular type, they're like, maybe this would be something I would die for. I would not die for Islam, but if we're gonna lose Iranian soil for people to want to declare the independence, now that's something that I might be willing to die for, because they're like, I'm not gonna die for Islam, but I might die for Iran, right? So they're
Yeah.
like, I will support this government if them falling is going to mean people want to cut out the pieces of Iran, then I will support this government. So
So
again,
it sounds so familiar. So first of all, so I guess the title of this episode, "Strange Bedfellows," I guess that applies within Iran as well. We have all these people
right,
having strange alliances, but
right,
it sounds a lot like that the classic story of these dictatorships. I mean, in Iraq as well, you have very generally you have this iron fist that has been keeping everything under control. If things have not necessarily been peaceful, at least they've been quiet and people have been going on with their lives. And then you take that iron fist away, and then suddenly you have all of these different factions, and everything becomes very, very complicated.
right.
So
But the thing is that even though the uprisings in Iran it doesn't seem that promising, it is the greatest weakness of Iran. It is Iran's greatest weakness. The people in the live chat were correct. The greatest weakness of Iran is not coming from outside, it is coming from inside. The problem
right.
is that Saudi Arabia, Israel, and United States are all looking for forces from within Iran to support. Right? They know this is the greatest weakness. They're like, oh, okay, who's on the front? Who's the organized groups within Iran that we could support to bring
Yeah,
Iran down?
that's worked really well in other situations when they've tried to find something opposing the government to support.
From within.
I'm being sarcastic. For the U.S.,
Yes.
it hasn't, right? Anytime they've tried to find the moderate factions against a dictator and they've tried to support them, they've always fallen flat on their faces. Always. So this is I
Right.
mean, most recently happened with
But
Assad, right? So
so this is how.
and with Iran, they don't even have a lot of transparency. Again, they don't know what's going on. Nobody has any polls. Nobody has a real. You have these dissidents who out there who are saying certain things, and you have other voices coming out of Iran. Nobody knows what the percentages are. Nobody has any accurate polling or anything from there
Right, but
to make any kind of
so
reliable.
this is how dumb the foreign policy of Saudi Arabia and so surprisingly United States has been, because for a long time the group that they decided to support as the major opposition from among Iranians against the Iranian government was the MEK, the Mujahideen Khalq, which is the only group of people that the Iranians hate more than their own government. Okay, I mean, if they were investing in the worst possible group to become a replacement for this government, they couldn't have picked anybody, to be worse than the MEK, and they picked the MEK. And the fact that they picked the MEK showed to me that Saudi Arabia has no freaking clue what it's doing. And neither did John Bolton and Rudy Giuliani, because they both supported the MEK, and then I think now they realize that they backed the wrong horse, and they looked at the recent protests in Iran, and they saw the recent anti-government protests in Iran. They looked at what people were chanting, and people were not. They saw that people were not chanting Maryam Rajavi, which is the leader of the Mujahideen Khalq. That's not the group, the name that they were chanting. They were chanting the son of the previous Shah, the monarchist. They were saying Reza Shah, Ruhat Shah, and they were saying the prince, they were asking the prince to come back and bring the Pahlavi back. But the thing is that the people. That was the only chant that showed support for a certain group, but they're still the minority. The problem is that the son of the Shah, who is in the United States now, he doesn't even support monarchy himself. So the fact that the monarchists are trying to back him to bring back monarchy is so ironic. But the thing is that there is no organized. There are a lot of people from within Iran and a lot of Iranians outside of Iran that want this government to topple. But they do not have any organization. They don't have any unity, and they constantly accuse each other. Of being puppets of Iranian government. As soon as they disagree, you know how Iranian governments, every time they want to accuse somebody of something, they accuse them of being Zionist puppets. So, for example, if a government, if an Iranian that supports the government wanted to accuse me of something, they would probably go with being paid by Zionists, right? But the anti-government forces, Iranian anti-governments, if I, for example, if they hear today's episode and they hear me saying that, oh, fighting Iranian government, Iran governments look strong. The protesters don't have that much hope. They will hate me, and they will be like, Armin is probably paid by Iran's government, right? I'm probably Iranian government's puppet, right? And they constantly accuse each other of this. Every time they disagree on something, they accuse each other of being puppets of Iran and trying to become disunity among their ranks, and they don't see eye to and every small disagreement is separating them, and they're not organized. They have none of these groups are a serious threat to Iran's government yet, right? So I don't know where would the opposition come from, because I can't think of the strongest opposition group is the monarchists. It's not the secularists, the secular humanists. It's the the monarchists, and they don't even want secular humanism. They want a Zoroastrian dictatorship, which is weird. But anyways, it's complicated. I just do want to go back to the topic, to the main theme, which is looking at the perspective, because this is what I was trying to get in. The perspective, I mentioned the perspective of Israel and how bad everything looks to Israel. And it's very interesting because with the recent tensions going up between the United States and Iran, what is very bizarre is Netanyahu hasn't been speaking much about this. Netanyahu usually starts, this is the time that he speaks the most. Like, you would expect right now for him to be on Twitter, talking shit against Iran, and be like, giving people reasons why we should go to war with Iran, and, congratulating Trump for his tough stance and all that stuff. But he has been silent for the past week or so, which is very, very bizarre. Some people in Iran are suggesting that Iran called his bluff and knows that they don't have the resources and capacity to go to war, because they thought, like, you know what, you guys are not. So basically, this is what the Iranian government's narrative is. You guys are dumb, but not dumb enough to think that you could go to war with us. Like, they're saying this is a bluff. You're not. So we call that your bluff, and now you're desperate to avoid going to war with us. And that's why their narrative is that this is why Netanyahu is quiet, because it's getting too close to getting to war, and Netanyahu knows that they can't afford that, because every time Iran's proxies have gone war with Iran, Iran have come out winning. So they're like, if we go on to full on war, then you're going to be like, oh fuck, no, we can't.
But why isn't he, like, before the elections? This is the time when he talks about it. I mean, doesn't. So
I don't know what the reason is, by the way. I'm just saying this is the narrative from the pro-Iran government side, right?
Right, because I mean that does kind of drum up his base, and this time he would also have support from. Trump's got John Bolton, and there's all these sort of hawks in the Trump administration,
right,
who would back it up too. So it could actually even feel more real. I think he's just. I think he's just got bigger things to handle right now.
Yeah, but even you're right. But also, people in Iran would point to look at Trump. Trump is like saying like, oh, maybe we don't want. He's now, look at what he's saying right now. He's saying like Trump gave his personal number to the Swiss and told them to like tell Iran that I'm waiting on the phone. They could call me at any time. Iran was like, yeah, Iran is like not calling. This is like they're laughing at him in Iran. They're like, look, Trump is begging us to call him, and like, look how desperate they are. At first, look, the narrative from the United States keep getting like less harsh and harsh, right? At first, they were like, these are they give Iran a list of conditions to meet before they start negotiation, and Iran was like, well, we don't want to negotiate, so why should we meet your conditions? And the conditions are ridiculous anyways. And then the list of conditions went from like 10 to 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there were no conditions. Trump is like, here's my number, please call me. So Iran is like, look, they tried to act tough, and now they're desperate for us to call them, and we're not going to call them because we don't want to negotiate with you, right? We called out your bluff. And they also saying, like, first we're like, oh, we're going to...
Why does the U.S. want to do this, though? Why would the U.S. want to... What do they want to negotiate?
So, okay, it depends on who in the United States you're talking about. John Bolton, he just wants. I don't think he
wants to bomb everybody.
He has a boner for bombing people, right? So that's him. Trump base.
Oh my God! You just gave me this visual of John Bolton and his boner.
But Trump's base, they probably want to go to the elections saying like, look, I pressured Iran into a better deal. That's what they want, right? So they say like they wanted to act tough, put a lot of pressure on Iran for Iran to be desperate enough for oxygen, like to make Iran suffocate enough to come to United States, to beg United States for another round of negotiations, and this time a deal that Trump could come and tell United States citizens, look, I made a better deal with Iran. The deal that Obama made with Iran was ridiculous, but I came up with a deal. I put more pressure on them, and now I have a deal that is like they didn't want to go to war with Iran, but they come to United States citizens and are like, look, my deal is now better, right? And now that Iran is not... The problem is that the pressure that they're putting on Iran...
He kind of always knew that wasn't going to happen.
No, actually, it seems like there are some reports, and I don't know how reliable it is, that he's now upset with his advisors because they told him Iran will come and make a new deal, and Iran is not coming to make a new deal, and Trump is angry that why you told me that this pressure is going to force Iran to come make a new deal, and it's not. The thing is that the pressure that they put on Iran is being felt by the Iranian people and not much by the Iranian government. Okay. So Iranian government doesn't. It's not like the Iranian government. They don't give a shit about
sanctions.
Like why would they care about the Iranian people? Like it's not like they're good people.
This is kind of interesting, and I think that what you said before makes a lot of sense. I mean, if if they made a deal with Obama, right, and a whole bunch of other countries, and they got together and they made that deal, and that was relatively reliable. There was a very good chance that deal would have been carried off into the future and it would have had some lasting power.
Right.
And they made that deal, and now that deal has been violated, why would they make a deal with Trump, who's when that life expectancy would be even more unreliable?
Yeah, they would
than the previous deal.
Yeah, they say like, hey, if presidents change and next president, every president can stop the deal of the last president, and also, Ali, this works so well for them. Because
you're loving this.
No, I don't love this because this is good for Iranian government, but it's very interesting. But here's the thing. They are also playing a different narrative. They're like, look, this is why we don't have full-on democracy in Iran. Because this is why we need a religious leader plus a presidency. And they're now saying maybe we should even get rid of our presidency because, look, they made a deal with one president and the next president come and they threw at the deal. But
that's an argument against democracy.
And they say this is the argument against full-on democracy because when you make a deal with Iran, there's a portion of the Iranian government that will never change, and that gives you stability. And they're going to Iranian people like, see, this is what full-on democracy gives you. Not, you don't even know who you're talking to. You're talking to one president, and then the next president comes in and he's like, oh, you didn't deal with me, you deal with the other guy. So why should we make a deal with this new guy if the next president could come and throw out his deal, right?
Yeah.
So and this is why they say. So a lot of people in Iran, they say like, oh, we hate our government because instead of taking care of the Iranian people, they're taking our tax money and they're investing it in Syria, they're investing it in Iraq, and they're investing it in their empire building. They're like they say, Iranian people are saying, we have problems here at home, and you're worried about the Palestinian people. You're worried about your war with Israel. You're worried about your war with Saudi Arabia. You're worried about your war with United States. We have people here at home. Take care of your people at home. And Iran government's response to that is like, look, given that deals don't work, given that negotiations, signing papers, treaties, you make one deal one day, and these motherfuckers are going to throw it out the next day. So given that none of this works, the only language that these people understand is military might. They say, you know why they want us to not have a nuclear weapon, but the North Korea apparently now is allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Do you know what's the difference? The difference is they have a nuclear weapon already, so they can't talk shit to them.
The U.S. This idea.
So
there's also this idea the U.S. never goes to war with countries that have nuclear weapons.
So they're like, look, the only language the Israel understands, the only language that Saudi Arabia understands, the only language that United States understands is the language of who has the military might. And this is why we are building our empire. This is, well, they don't call it empire. The nationalists call it the empire. The religious people call it exporting the Islamic Revolution, right? So the reason why we need to have this amount of influence, where United States has its interest, we want to be there, and we want to be a threat to them, because this is what they get. We have to force them to listen to us. We can't negotiate with them. And here's another thing. A lot of people, they tell their people, they say like, oh, you tell us why we're messing with, Israel, and why we're like funding people against ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. This is our neighborhood. They tell, again, I'm going to sound like such an Iran apologist, but the problem is that these arguments work. You might, okay, so when I say these things, let me just say, I'm not supporting the Iranian government, but these are strong arguments that they work, and it's unfortunate.
No, they are persuasive.
And it's unfortunate that they work, and you can't, the thing is that you cannot, if you want to defeat Iran's government, you have to come up with a better counter narrative, because you need the people on the ground. You cannot defeat governments and militaries just from up air. And if you want to defeat people on the ground, you need the support of the people on the ground. And your narratives are not working. Iran's narrative is this: like, look how unfair this is. United States is telling the Iran's government that you shouldn't meddle in these other countries. They're like, bitch, this is our fucking neighborhood. You're coming across from all over from another continent, and you have bases all around us, and you're telling us not to meddle in other countries' business? This is our backyard. And they say, guess what? We are in Iraq. They say Iran's military is in Iraq with the blessings of Iraq's government. Iran's military is in Syria with the blessings of Syria's government. We are in Lebanon with the blessing of Hezbollah, which is part of Lebanon's government. What about you motherfuckers? You came to Iraq with no one's fucking permission. You came and bombed Syria with no one's fucking permission. Right? You come and Saudi Arabia can't.
You are trying to swear less?
No, yes, I'm trying. It's not working. Saudi Arabia kidnapped the Prime Minister of another country.
Your voice is getting very muffled when you're yelling. Just
okay.
Little volume.
Saudi Arabia.
I don't want to ask you to tone it down.
Okay. I'm not supporting the Iranian government. But if you want to defeat the Iranian government, you first have to have better narratives. You need to hire me. Okay.
So that's how we talk about the Trump administration.
I'm just saying, like, I'm coming off. I realize that this is coming off as being an apologist for the Iranian government. I'm just saying that if you need to hire me, I will give you better narratives against the Iranian government. Because if you say like, oh, we're coming there to save the Iranian people are going to call bullshit on that. Because you put Saudi Arabia on the head of the Human Rights Commission in the United Nations, they will call bullshit on that. You are responsible for selling arms to Saudi Arabia that dropped it on children, that bombed ports to use starvations as weapon against children. You sold weapons to Saudi Arabia to do that, and now you're coming off and saying like, oh, humanitarian crisis, we need to save the Iranian people. Well, people can call bullshit on that. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Yeah. So that was, I did not want to get in the middle of that, but that was, you're right. And by the way, I don't think, well, I know you're not an Iran apologist, but I do think this is important. I get kind of animated when it comes to this with US politics, where whenever I'm talking to my liberal friends and they're all talking about, well, the Mueller report, this, and we have to defeat Trump, I'm like, dude, Trump is brilliant. His strategies are brilliant. What he's doing, he's playing you. He's playing the media. He's playing the narrative, and you guys are all falling for it. It's the same kind of thing, but that doesn't mean that I'm a Trump apologist. Actually, I think it's pretty obvious I'm the exact opposite. But in any case, there is a question here.
We should go to Patreon questions.
We'll go to Patreon questions.
There's question. It's not a Patreon question because this is just to be clear. Wait. The ones that is just you and me is public to everybody. So only when we have guests, the live streams are for patrons. But when it's you and me alone, this is for everybody. So this is for everybody. So yeah.
Eamon Whitfield is asking, excuse my ignorance, but why does Russia have interest in Iran? So yeah, there's no ignorant thing there. I mean, that is a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Armin?
Well, because Russia is being very smart regarding to the again, countries like Saudi Arabia is being dumb. Countries like and Israel is being dumb, but Iran and Russia is being very smart because they're trying to figure out how I can make the biggest amount of difference. How can I be the most carry out the most weight and be the cause of most influence with the limited resources that I have, right? So Russia, by getting involved in backing Syria and Iran, becomes an important piece of the making negotiation work. Like, for example, United States can't ask Iran, for example, for anything, but Russia can. Right, Russia can negotiate with Iran, and because Russia got close, for example, to Iran and Syria, Russia becomes an important piece in making things that United States wants, and the important things that Israel wants and Saudi Arabia wants. Russia becomes an important piece of the puzzle because how close they are to Iran and Syria, right? And that way they could ask for things. That way they could put pressure on United States if they need to. They're very, very smart. They kept Assad because Assad is now loyal to Russia, and by having Assad there, Russia could be like, hey, United States, if you want to talk, force me out of Ukraine or wherever else, I could fuck up your interests in the Middle East because I have Iran and Syria and they're my buddies. And now I could, it just makes strategic sense to them. It's not ideological. It makes very, because Russia is not as powerful as it was. So it has to play smart rather than, showing off its military might. It has to be more strategic, and it's doing it very effectively.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see that now. One more thing. Israel and Saudi Arabia, why are they getting together? And why do they want to? That's one question.
Look at the map. Okay, this is what I wanted to say from the very beginning, and I never said it. If you look at what they call the Shia crescent, right? Because remember the way Iran goes with its influence. So it's a pyramid scheme, right? The base is Islam. Okay, where Islam is there, you have some influence, and then where there's Shia Islam, you have more influence, and then when you have Velayat Faqih branch or Khomeinism branch of Shia Islam, then you have the maximum influence, right? And that's where and then when you have proxies, then you have all the influence, right? But the thing is that you need to build the base. This is why when they want to export their ideology, they don't go like, hey, worship Khomeini and Khamenei. No, they smuggle in Hussein before they bring in Khamenei and Khomeini, right? So smuggling Hussein is to lay down the base. This is why I'm scared when I see Ashura in Vancouver, because I feel like, who's funding this? Somebody's layering the base here, right? So,
Yeah.
but if you look at the Shia crescent, you can see you have Iran, you have Saudi Arabia, and it looks like the Shia crescent is swallowing Saudi Arabia and Israel, because the Shia crescent comes, the places in the Middle East where it's Shia, you have the Houthis in Yemen, you have Bahrain, which is like a lot of Shias there. You go into Saudi Arabia itself, the oil rich parts of Saudi Arabia is Shia. Imagine how scary that is to Saudi Arabia. You go Iraq, which is mostly Shia. You go to Syria, which is mostly Sunni, but they managed to keep the Shia government in power. And and then you go all the way down under Saudi Arabia, you have Yemen. Actually, I already mentioned that. But the thing is that what you have Saudi Arabia here in the middle, and you have the Shia crescent, which is a crescent that is basically swallowing Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is like, okay, this is scary. They were scared from 1979. They were scared, and they're if they were scared before, they're terrified now, because Iran never made it a secret that they want they want the Saudi government to fall. That it's like Saudi Arabia, at least okay, let me give you what the Saudi narrative is, right? The Saudi narrative that works. Everything that Ben Salman has done is dumb, but what the narrative works is like, hey guys, look, we the Saudis, we don't really care about anything outside of Saudi Arabia, okay? We're just defending our own borders, right? Yeah, we built madrasas and stuff out there, but that got out of hand. We're like, yes, terrorists came out of Saudi Arabia, but that was not the House of Saud. Like, that was not us. That's just like an experiment that failed, okay? Like, that was not intentional. We didn't want to create Al-Qaeda. We didn't want to create ISIS. And technically, United States, you're also responsible for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But it wasn't intentional, okay? All we're trying to do is to keep Saudi Arabia. But what Iran is doing, Iran is coming out of its own borders. They're coming out and they want to end us. We don't want to end Iran. We had a good relationship with Iran before the Islamic Revolution. We were allies with the Shah. So we're not empire building. They are middling around the Middle East. We're not middling around the Middle East. So that's their narrative. And they look at what they're saying. Look at their sermons. They're saying that they wanted the two holy cities. They're saying one day we will be able to bring the holy cities back for Mahdi. What they're saying is that they're going to capture Medina and Mecca for Shia Islam. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that we're going to capture Quds. Israel is saying the same thing. Israel is like, look, I don't want to go destroy Iran. We don't want to invade Iran. They want to invade us. They're saying that. Their foreign army is named after Jerusalem. They have songs about capturing Jerusalem for Iran. So
what is Iran building a nuclear weapon or not?
Iran wants to be okay. This again. Everything. Be extremely skeptical about everything we say here, because there is, first of all, Iran has many different parts when it comes to who in Iran you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So there are people in Iran that think Hashemi Rafsanjani, he thought Iran shouldn't even have an army, right?
Yep.
So there are people in Iran that think like, no, we shouldn't. They say Iran shouldn't, and there are people in Iran that say they should. Iran should have a nuclear weapon. Yeah. But
I talked to a cleric like many years ago in Qom.
Right.
Right, and he was saying that it would be un-Islamic to have a nuclear weapon.
Okay, but it doesn't matter what this cleric or what that cleric says.
That they say, right?
No. I'm not saying that guy was doing taqiyya, because he might be. I'm just saying you could find many clerics that think that it's un-Islamic and Iran, or whatever, Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, and you could find clerics that say we should have a nuclear weapon, and the day after we have a nuclear weapon, we should be using it in Tel Aviv, right? So you will find examples of all of that.
Some might want to use it as a deterrent.
The real question is that the people that actually have the power, what do they want? Okay, that's the real question.
Yeah,
Because
well, not only what do they want, but are they going to
so
build?
I'm gonna
Because that is the narrative. Everybody says they're building one.
right. So the people that are the main major influencers in Iran, right? They're not idiots. Okay, if Iran has a really if you could find absolute proof that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, I think that would be very, very dangerous to this government being able to survive. The time between not having a bomb and having a bomb will be the time that this government will be at its highest risk for falling, right? What instead of actually this is what I think is what they want, and again this is a guess, so take it with a grain of salt, like a lot of salt, because there is no reliable proof evidence to show that this is true. But if you're playing the game theory and if you think the players are all rational, this is the smartest game to play, is to bring Iran to a situation where it doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but has the capacity to go from not having a nuclear weapon to having a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
Yeah.
So what they want is to not actually have a nuclear weapon, right? But create the resources, the technology, and all the know-how to be able to
Build one very
one very fast if they needed to.
Yeah.
Because then they can have. This is the perfect situation for having the cake and eating it too. Because then they will have the. Because if you actually have the nuclear weapon, it's risky. It's a deterrent, but it's also risky because while you're in the process of making it, if people find out, that will be the time that you could actually get an international coalition to fight to finally attack Iran. So it's risky, but but once you get the deterrent, it might not be risky after that. But this is a perfect situation where you do not create that high risk situation, but you also have the deterrent element of it. Do you know what I mean? So it will basically create the best of both worlds.
Okay.
Right. Go.
Got it. Yeah. So because that's one of the questions is that it's almost established that they're building one, but at the same time, everybody said, oh, it's 2 years away, 3 years away, 1 year away, 2 years away, and it hasn't. So nobody.
But anyway, people be very clear about this. Having nuclear. Power plants and having nuclear weapons, that's two different things. Because if you ask, if you say if they're having nuclear energy, they're unanimous on that. Yeah, they want that. Okay, they want nuclear energy. There's no one in the government that we know of, at least, that says they shouldn't have nuclear power. The question that Ali asked was nuclear weapon, not nuclear power. But go on.
Would Iran, if they had, the last question before we go on to if they had a nuclear weapon, if Iran had it, would it use it on Israel? Wouldn't that be just national suicide immediately?
Yeah, no, of course, no, yeah.
Wouldn't it kill a lot of Arabs as well?
No,
they kill more Arabs.
No, they wouldn't use it. They're not. Okay, again, the worst kind of evil is smart evil. Okay, so the problem with the Iranian government is not that. It's not that they're chaotic, idiot evil. Don't let the religious side of them fool you. They are very politically savvy. Why would they, of course they're not going to nuke Israel. What? Why would that accomplish? Getting the whole world united against you? Why would they? No.
You know what? This is one thing. I think you're hitting on something that's super important is people say this stuff about Iran, that Iran is, it's chaotic. They're absolutely crazy. You never know what they're going to do. They're unpredictable. That couldn't be further from the truth. This idea, right, that Iran is this apocalyptic thing that will only ally with religious people, that the U.S. is a great Satan. Iran allied with the Soviets, right, who are the atheist, godless communists.
Right.
So Iran has done that when it suited its purpose. So this whole idea that
they use religion. Okay, so they do have the narrative that they were going to bring the end of times and stuff, but the strategic element of that is that nobody knows when that is, right? So it's not like they want to bring the end of times tomorrow. They could basically ask. They could keep increasing their resources, their wealth, their strategic power, and keep acting like they want to bring the end of times forever, right? Because nobody, like, you don't have to act like you want to bring that end of time soon, right? You just, so it just works perfectly. So you could act like you could act like you want to bring the end of times without actually working on bringing on the end of times. You actually, technically, you're working on just increasing your wealth and your power, just like everybody else does. But this time they're using religious narratives, which is so, the Shia narrative works perfectly. Like, it's written for this kind of stuff. But go on.
It is, yeah.
More
Okay,
questions.
so patron question, Nusantara Rising. Is Assad not the preferable option for atheists, though? He banned hijab, allowed drinking and Western lifestyles.
Not
Would you
for
rather the Shah of Khomeini?
not for humanists. Like, we're
No,
not
not at all. Like this whole idea.
no. I'm
The
not gonna.
majority of atheists that I know, and remember, when I'm talking about atheism, and when we're talking about atheism, we are thinking of humanists.
Yeah.
We're talking about countries like the Scandinavian countries, like Canada, like Japan, that have really, really high rates of non-belief, and these are not places that want to do.
Look, okay, if somebody, okay, we are extremely anti-Islam, okay, but if somebody talks shit about, even, like, I know Assad hasn't done that, but even if somebody goes as far as being a leader in an Islamic country that talks shit about Islam and drops barrel bombs on children, do you think we're gonna clap when they talk shit about Islam? Who the fuck cares that they're talking shit about, that they're doing something against, Islamists or Muslim fundamentalists? They are a bigger monster. Like, Assad competes. Assad competes with ISIS when it comes to brutality and human rights violations. So it doesn't, even if it doesn't do that in the name of religion, fuck him. Fuck him. He's a bigger monster. He's as big of a monster as ISIS. Sorry.
I love this. No, you're on fire today. I absolutely love this. So here's the thing. Like, I'm an atheist and a humanist because it's a moral choice. It's a moral choice. I don't like authoritarianism. I don't like totalitarianism. So if there is an atheist nation, a country that is officially atheist, and
he's not, by the way, he's Muslim.
Yeah, I know. He is. He's an
more secular,
Alawi Shia.
more secular. Yeah.
But supposing there was, right, and then they forced it on people by telling people what to wear, banning the hijab, and forcing that kind of thing, I would be absolutely against, because that is what I associate. That's what religious people do. That is not what I would want to do. So we don't want to
defeat evil with another form of evil.
Right. So we're not going to this whole idea that you have to take one side more than the other because one side is with non-belief. There's a lot of atheists who are complete assholes.
Right.
And we know that. Okay, so next question. I'm kind of going through this. I'm going through the video actually right now because for some reason the chat lost all the older questions.
No, I have them up here. You just go scroll up.
No, mine's not scrolling all the way up. So Uday is saying, oh no, he's asking another person. This is about Kuwait and oil. So
guys, if we missed some of your questions before, can you post them again if there's something that we missed that you want us to answer? Because I saw some really good ones.
Right. So Chris is saying Trump is only safe right now because the president can't be arrested as per the United States Constitution. Yes, he can't be indicted. He can be impeached. That's a complicated thing. That's for another episode. That's not something that we're going to get into it because it'll get off topic.
I see a question from Halal Park. Do you see that?
Yeah, do it.
Halal Park is saying, is there another religious faction? Fraction, I think you mean. No, faction. Sorry. Faction. Yes. Another religious faction in Iran that has a chance to stand against the Shias. Or will it be secularism versus religiosity like in Turkey? Religious faction, sorry. Keep misreading it.
I don't think so. I don't think there's another religious faction.
Religious faction, okay, so
against
the MEK,
Shias. I mean, a non-Shia
the MEK faction is weird because I don't know if there's a category for that. The MEK is like a marriage between Islam and communism, so like it's two monsters having a baby. There are a religious faction, but it's more of a cult than a religious faction because they're not big enough to be a religious faction. So that's the MEK. It's just a weird. By the way, look up the MEK. There, this is such
Yeah.
a weird cult.
So
No, wait.
sorry, I have one from Uday.
Let me
He's saying,
finish. Let me finish answer this. But I think it would. It actually the answer is yes. There is another religious faction that actually you're right. The highest threat to Iran is another religious faction, but it's a different version of Shia Islam. Okay, so basically, the greatest ideological threat to Iran's government comes from non-Velayat Faqih Shia Islam. So like Shirazi imams in UK and all the Shia Muslims. So this is the problem. If you the greatest organized threat against the Shia government in Iran is another Shia are other Shias, right? So if you get rid of this government, it's a very high chance that whatever comes to power in the power vacuum that causes that is comes right after, the most organized group will be another Shia institution, and more religious actually, which is weird if like more religious Shiism. But anyways, yeah. So it's another version. Not only they, I think actually this is very interesting because not only they are the greatest religious threat to this government, they might actually be the most organized threat to this government. And that's why you see more Iranian propaganda for why Iran's version of Shia Islam is the correct version of Shia Islam. Because it's easier if you want to go right at the and capture the base of the support that this government has. What you would do is you go to them with telling them that, you know what, you got Shiism right, but Khomeini and Khamenei lied to you about Shia Islam because Velayat Faqih is a lie. So that is a dangerous threat to the very base of this government. So the greatest threat to them might be another version of Shiism. But go on.
yeah. Uday is saying, do death by stoning and death by beheading Sharia laws exist in Iran like they do in Saudi Arabia?
Wait, death by stoning, don't they in Saudi Arabia? Don't they just behead only? Do they have?
Yeah, they mainly behead. I mean, they officially have death by stoning. They have the regimen punishment, but they don't really exercise it. Actually, recently, for many years, they haven't even done the amputation. It's been very, very rare.
Crucifixion. They do crucifixion.
Yeah, they've done crucifixion and they've done beheading, but they haven't even done the amputation for stealing as much as they used to.
Okay, so Iran has done amputation. It's rare in Iran, but it happens. Just recently,
death by stoning also happens in Iran,
but not by government. Okay, so recently the government cut off some thieves' fingers. They have a specific machine for it. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. The death by stoning, if it does happen, is because either the government ignored the stoning or they got there too late, and it happened in a village somewhere. But officially, the government doesn't carry out stoning.
Okay. All right, but I mean the Sharia laws, they do hang gay people from cranes and blasphemers.
Yeah, which a lot of Sunnis might point to how un-Islamic that is. So Iran, the Iranian government, the way they execute people is hanging, and a lot of time public hanging if they want to make an example of somebody. The problem is actually it sounds less barbaric than what Saudi Arabia does, but it's actually more barbaric because the beheading is instant. The hanging takes a while because they don't do the method where you get dropped and your neck breaks. They don't do that. Basically, they put you on a crane and they drive away, and then you get hanged and you suffocate. So it's a slow death. So Iran's way looks cleaner, but it's more barbaric and it's more painful the way they do it, and it's actually less Islamic because a lot of Sunnis that are anti-Iran will remind you that where is hanging in Islam? How is this Islamic? Why, I don't know actually where Iran gets that from. I have to look into that because there is no hadith for hanging people. Is there, Ali?
No.
So
but in Iran, I remember in Homeland they actually showed it very graphically. The Brody was hanged
Oh
in
yeah.
Iran. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler, but it was many seasons ago. That's how he was killed from the show. So anyway, um, James Gross is asking, can you talk about the Iran-sponsored Al-Quds Day protests? Isn't this something that
I
pisses off
used.
the Iranians a lot?
Oh yeah,
Because they're like,
well, a lot. Every course, the divisions in Iran goes gets higher, right? Because the pro-government people come out in the streets, and they say stuff against.
uh,
By the way, if you want the highest amount, like the reporters come and talk to people. If you want to hear anti-Semitic stuff, the highest, just go look at the interviews that the reporters of Iranian TV does with people on Quds Day, to come and talk about Israel and stuff. Oh, it's so insane. But anyway, so this is the time of the year where people in Iran show their support for the Palestinian people and against Israel, and the people in Iran that are against their own government will remind everybody of how ridiculous this day is, how Iran is spending money and support for foreigners rather than taking care of its own people. There was actually okay. Here's how intense the situation is. Okay, so coming up this Quds Day that was coming in Iran, which is the celebration of Jerusalem and people Iran's loyalty towards Palestinian people and against Israel, right? Coming this Quds Day, a lot of people, Iranians on Twitter, were shitting on this day, and there's a hashtag that I don't know if it was a hashtag or it was just a topic that was trending. Iranian people were saying they love Israel, so they're saying
yeah,
fuck Iranian government. Not only on this day, we're not going to say that we hate Israel, we're going to say that we love Israel. And there was this this religious woman in Iran saying like, I see a lot of people, Iran, a lot of traitors from our country are saying they love Israel. Obviously, they're a minority. I'm going to do a poll. This was her mistake. I'm going to do a poll. I'm going to ask my fellow Iranians to answer, and this was all in Persian, to vote to say if they love Israel or if they hate Israel, because Iranian people will not disappoint me, and they will vote that they hate Israel. And 15,000 people voted, and this poll was written in Persian, so you could trust that most people answering were Iranian, right? Because but I mean, it wasn't even, non-Iranians didn't even know that this was happening. So it got 15,000, but this is not scientific. So, and usually when you ask a question like that, you're challenging people to come defeat you. So take all of this with a grain of salt. But more
yeah.
than 80% of the Iranians voting on this Twitter poll voted that they love Israel.
Mhm.
They love so this is on social media. If you just look at Twitter, it looks like, wow, this is what you get from Iran, that 80% Iranians vote that they love Israel. But again, you don't.
80% of Iranians who saw the tweet.
Yeah, it
Like,
might indicate that most Iranians love Israel, but you don't know, because again, this is the Twitter environment. You don't know if it represents
and
the people
because
on
of
the
the
ground.
context in
But
which
yeah, and if you
that came
look
around
at and
too.
if you look at Iran's TV, obviously you're gonna show, like, they're gonna go into the Quds protests in the street. They're gonna interview people, and you're gonna feel like, wow, Iranian people really hate Israel. If you're on Twitter, you're gonna feel like Iranian people love Israel. If you're looking at Iranian state TV interviewing people in the street, you're gonna think Iranian people hate Israel, which is,
Yeah,
again. So again, who's right, who's wrong, who's the majority? Nobody knows. We can
nobody
just,
knows.
but we can guess. It's fun to guess. But go on.
Right. Okay, so Uday is saying, Armin, this is a quick one, so just do this as quick as you can.
Oh,
Armin, which part of Iran are you from? You're from Tehran, right?
yes, Shemran, Upper Tehran, which people
And where were you
come.
born?
When?
Where were you born?
Upper Tehran, Shemran.
Uh,
Yeah,
Upper Tehran.
Upper
And
Tehran.
where did you study about Islam?
Well, in school, like my whole life in school,
Yeah,
it
we
was
all had to
man.
do that. Me too.
This is part of your. I mean, you learn is from kindergarten till my university year. We had, so in Iran. In Iran, the school system is not like, it's not just elementary and high school, right? So in other places you have 6 years of elementary and 6 years of high school. In Iran, you have 5 years elementary, 3 years of guidance school, and then 4 years of high school. So 5, 3. Wait, does that add up? I think that's add up. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
five, 3, and 4, right? So, the 5 year elementary school, you have you learn literature, you learn math, science, plus one subject which is dini, which means religion. But then when you go to high school, that one subject turns into 3 subjects. So you have one subject which is dini, which is religion, then one subject which is Quran, and then another subject which is Arabic. So there's 3 different subjects focused on, because Iranians don't speak, their language is not Arabic. So because the Quran is written in Arabic, you have to learn Arabic. But then when you go to university as well, which I went to Tehran University, you have electives that you cannot not elect, which has frustrated me.
that's a lot like the leaders.
Right. So you have mandatory electives, which included Dini, religion, Quran, and Arabic. So even in university, in University Tehran, I was studying biology, cellular biology, and we still had to learn. We still had to study. By the way, for all my high school years and university, we studied Arabic, and I aced all my Arabic tests, and I can't speak Arabic, which basically we learn how to pass exams rather than how to speak.
Yeah, I was in Pakistan. We also had to do religious studies. It was compulsory. I didn't do it for all my schooling. I did like when I was in the American school in Riyadh. I didn't have to do it, but in pretty much all of my other years, throughout university, throughout medical school, we were taking Islamic classes. And I always took the Sunni course. A lot of the Shia students, because Shias are a minority in Pakistan, they would take the Sunni classes because they were easier. Everybody else, you could borrow each other's notes, because there were people in the class. If you did the Shia version, you'd be kind of on your own. So all of us kind of did the Sunni, the Sunni training. I think Sarah Haider also has a similar story. She studied Sunni Islam a lot more than Shia Islam. The Shia stuff we learned at home anyway.
By the way, a lot of Muslims tell me that, oh, Armin, you don't understand Islam because you learn Shia Islam, which is not the true version of Islam. So everything you say it's bullshit. You don't understand. But what I'm trying to do is, like, somebody is telling me to Yuval on Facebook live chat is asking for that tweet. I'm gonna try to find it, and maybe I want to show it on the screen. But Ali, you go ahead and find the other.
I think we're mostly done with the patron questions. There's a lot of comments that everybody's kind of speaking to each other, which is amazing. But I think we're kind of done with all the relevant things. Harris Sultan is here. Harris, how are you? And someone's asking about his book. Harris Sultan's book is called The Curse of God. It's a fantastic book. I wrote the foreword to it, so it's available on Amazon. So you can take a look at it. Harris Sultan, The Curse of God. And then Harris Sultan has been a previous guest here. So, check out that episode as well.
I want to okay, keep looking, because I want to find the tweet and show it on screen if I can.
Okay, there's a question about the Free Balochistan movement, which is more of a Pakistani thing. There's a separate separatist-Balochistan thing going on.
On both sides. There's
on both sides, in Iran as well. So in Iran, you have the Sistani-Balochistan, right? So the Balochi people are...
Yes, so the Baluch people in Iran side and the Pakistan side, they might want to get together and unite and become independent. And they're very mistreated.
I'm down with that. I am totally cool with it.
You just lost all their nationalist Iranian fans, because this is their greatest nightmare.
Sorry, nationalist Iranian, and a lot of nationalist Pakistanis too. But the thing is, one of the reasons that Pakistan is really sort of horny to keep Balochistan in, and not only because of the natural resources and everything, but also because Gwadar is a port in Balochistan that is kind of like Karachi. It's one of the few entryways into South Asia, and it's a huge coast, and Pakistan has ownership of it, and that they don't want to give that up. That's also another reason.
So I know where that tweet was sent to me. It was sent to me on Skype, but I'm talking to Ali on Skype, so I'm but it was sent to me from Iran, and I don't want to give away my contacts from Iran, so I'm gonna remove the Skype away from the screen while I switch to that chat, because I want to make sure I'm not giving away anybody. Any of my contacts from Iran, because they will get hanged if I do, so
yeah.
Yeah, no, this is not a good time to look for this tweet.
So, Nusantara is saying, are you guys following our shit show in Indonesia? Not very closely, but we really, really want
Hmm.
somebody from Indonesia. We've talked
Ali,
about
you're
them,
getting
and
cut.
I'm
You're
really
getting
sorry I
cut.
haven't been able to materialize it. Nusantara. Oh, okay. No, I have said that we want somebody from Indonesia to come on the show. So, Nusantara, if you can email me, I'm typing in my email right now. If you can't see it here, just go to my Twitter bio. It's right there. It's aliamjadrizvi@gmail.com. If you
Oh,
could
Harris
write to me
Sultan
over
is
there.
here.
Yeah, I just did the
Oh,
whole
I
thing
didn't.
with this book
Okay, yeah. I sorry. I
promotion.
was looking for the
Armin was
tweet.
looking for his tweet.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I will
so
link.
Nusantara.
Okay, I can't find it right now.
Hold on, let me
I'll.
finish this. Can you
Yeah.
just get in touch with me
Mm.
and let me know if you'd be willing to come on, or if you have any suggestions for anybody who can talk about Indonesia and come on the show.
Okay,
Armin.
I can't find the tweet right now, but I will find it and I will link to it in the description of this video, of this live chat, to the tweet that I mentioned with the people. By the way, I covered the tweet on screen on the Persian show of Atheist Republic as well, so I know it's there for sure because we showed it on screen. But I wish I could show it to you on screen because it's actually a very interesting poll. But right now you just have to take my word for it. But we will link in the description when I find it. I will link in the description. But go on, Ali. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, I think we're good here. We got everything. I'm gonna check again on Facebook
Okay.
and to see if there's any more
Uh,
questions on there.
no, I
But
said that's what I was doing. I was responding to Yuval on Facebook.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're done. I think we're good over
Cool.
here.
We're gonna get
And
a lot of people finding little things that disagree on this, and they're gonna come on Twitter and they're gonna be like, "Oh, you said this. This is like."
please do that. Do that.
But
Yes.
guys, yeah, one thing I just have to let you guys know, I have lost a lot. There are a lot of people that were really happy from Iran that found out that somebody from Iran like me is very active against the Islamic nonsense that is coming out of Iran. But I have lost a ton of support from Iran because of because making more sense than they do, because of being realistic about the possibilities and the level of influence that this government has, and some of the inhumane things that some activists from Iran support. Okay, not all of them are like this. There are a lot of secular atheists, humanists, emphasis on humanists from Iran as well, but there are some people that are so obsessed with getting rid of Iran's government by whatever means necessary. They like, we don't care if we have to make a deal with the United States. We don't even care if we have to make a deal with the devil himself. They have been hurt so much by Iran's government that they say if Tel Aviv wants to come take over Iran, we will welcome them with open arms. Israel, whatever. This government has to go. They say, like, people say, no, if this government falls, it will be 10 years of civil war. They say we will pay the price with blood. We will pay the price with the blood of our own children if that's what it takes to get rid of this government, because they have suffered. They are tired of this government, and they will, like, 10 years of civil war, bring it on if it means that this government falls, right? But there are other people that say, no, that's not worth it. That's not the price that we're willing to pay. And there are other people that say, no, 10 years of civil war is not going to happen. That's bullshit. That's fear mongering. We get rid of this government and everything is going to be rainbows and butterflies after that. There are people that say, like, oh, if this government falls, no, the Turks are not going to try to get independence. No, the Kurds, talk to the Kurds. They see themselves as Iranian first, Kurds second. These are the things you hear, right? But no, if you actually go talk to the Kurds, they don't see themselves as Iranian first. They see themselves as Kurd first. And half of them are fuck Iran altogether, right? But again, these are the competing narratives that is happening in Iran. The competing narrative in Iraq, again, what do Iraqi people think? Some some Iraqis are like, oh, Iran is a blessing to Iraq. Some Iraqis are like, no, if, why Iran should stop meddling in our government, right? So if you hear something on Twitter, if you hear in Israel, you go talk to Israelis. No two Israelis can agree on a single thing. If you go talk to, actually, the most unanimous views that you could get, I heard in Palestine, okay, on politics, not on religion. But Israelis disagree. Iraqis disagrees. Saudi people don't disagree. A lot of Saudi people hate their own government for being so close to Israeli. But I mean, they do disagree, but they're more unanimous on this than Iranian people. Iranian people are very divided. Americans are very divided. So if you hear a narrative, if you hear something on Twitter, both from the government, against the government, don't assume that, oh, this Iranian is saying this, or this Israeli is saying this, or me, if I'm saying this, this must be the true thing. It's very complicated. There are a lot of competing narratives, and everybody has something to sell. So you just have to try to see what people's biases are. And even like if I'm telling you these things, I'm biased, okay? I'm an anti-Islam. I have anti-Islamic bias, right? So you have to see, like, maybe I'm saying something that is not true. You have to take my anti-Islam bias into account to see if I'm being fair, if I'm saying something, right? I'm trying to not to be biased. I'm trying to look at things realistically, but you can't just accept people what they're saying. You just what we tell you and what other people tell you, that's just one of the pieces of the puzzle, and you just like try to take it all in and put it all together, right? To see if you could make it, you could see what the entire image looks like. Everything, don't just take anyone's word for it. Not mine, not anyone else's. But sorry, Ali, go ahead.
Yeah. So no, that's it. Yeah. That's for us. So we're gonna wrap it up right now. Yeah, that was fun. There's probably a lot more we could get into on this topic, but I think this is
a lot of history we could have get into that we didn't, which is already in the third part of our Islam versus Shia series. Actually,
the Sunni versus Shia series.
No, so actually, a lot of Sunnis would love that I said Islam versus Shia because that's how they see it. It's not Sunni versus Shia; it's Islam versus Shia.
I did the opposite. My Eid greeting, by the way, everybody who celebrated Eid, a belated Eid Mubarak, a happy Eid to all of you who celebrated.
Oh my God! A lot of Sunnis would see what I just said as a Freudian slip. Like, oh, Armin is admitted that Shia Islam is not really Islam. Eric, if I go.
No, but I actually had fun with it. So what I'd written on Eid was that today it shouldn't matter whether you're a true Muslim or just a Sunni. Eid is for everybody. Eid Mubarak to all of you. And that was a lot of fun because most people are like, oh, thank you. And then there's a lot of Sunnis who got really upset, which was fun.
Why did they get upset? You were being nice.
I said today it shouldn't matter whether you're a true Muslim or just a Sunni.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why. That's my yearly Eid greeting. But anyway, so that and we're gonna go now. We're gonna come back soon. Until next time. So we'll see you guys. And if it hasn't happened already, go Raptors. I hope.
Leave your disagreements with whatever we said after the live stream is over. Leave your disagreements in the comment section of the YouTube video. That we would like to see what the counter to anything we said. Like, if you disagree, it's good because we want to see, like, we learn a lot from the comment section. So so thank you for that.
Abe Patel is saying, Rizvi bro, I have questions about med school. Email me.
Okay.
About that here. All right, guys.
All right. Love you.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.